Okay, now let's talk about Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. In the introduction of this course, we talked about vSphere 7 with Tanzu and a little bit about how Tanzu Kubernetes Grid works in vSphere 7 to provide Kubernetes services. Now, Tanzu Kubernetes Grid itself actually goes well above and beyond just vSphere 7. This is the needs of the modern enterprise is not just to deploy on one premise, on one version of vSphere, in one site. Right? We need to be able to deliver consistent enterprise Kubernetes services across multiple cloud providers, across our own premises, across edge use cases, etc. That's really what Tanzu Kubernetes Grid is about. And we viewed in the previous section many things that don't come included with just Kubernetes by itself, additional requirements that we're really going to need to put Kubernetes to use. How we architect our Kubernetes implementation, how we provide it the underlying automations and lifecycle management for Kubernetes. And so from the get-go, right, with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, and when you're enabling it on vSphere 7, it's already pre-integrated into the platform. If you need to install it onto a vSphere 6.7 environment, we have TKGI support on vSphere 6.5. If you just install this on a public cloud environment, in those cases, we have a very simple installation wizard, and that is for getting your management services up and running. Right, and so if you want to provide, I think the experience that developers expect and demand of Kubernetes, right? Well, just like when they go to a cloud provider, they're able to click a button and put in a request and have a Kubernetes cluster provisioned or access to Kubernetes cluster. And so when you install Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, the first thing you install is a management component. And that management component allows say enterprise IT to offer a service that allows developers to come and request through native Kubernetes APIs, to be able to power a self-service access portal, and so that way with the click of a button or with a very simple request, the user is able to have the Kubernetes cluster provisioned, according to their permission levels, right, automatically on demand. After that Kubernetes cluster is provisioned, we automate the operations, things from self-healing of the cluster to making sure it's always up and running, to what happens when we need to upgrade the cluster and keep it up to date, current, and secure throughout its lifestyle. So these automations are in there as well. In addition, when you deploy Kubernetes, it depends on a number of external services, and so with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, we've included the core services that you need to get Kubernetes up and running. Let's take another look. Okay, now let's talk about Tanzu Kubernetes Grid integrated, shared, and in-cluster services. So let's start here at the bottom of the slide, and let's talk about infrastructure as a service providers. So Kubernetes needs plugins for each specific infrastructure provider that can handle the range of services, CPI, cloud networking interface, cloud storage interface, etc., to be able to communicate with the different underlying services that it needs to, right? And so when you're packaging installations and lifecycle management to be able to deploy Kubernetes to each of these different environments, you have to make sure that you bundle and specify the appropriate plugins and the integrations in your installation upgrade path, right? And so that's one of the advantages of TKG. You don't have to worry about maintaining upgrade bundles for installation bundles, scripts, etc., for the different infrastructure service providers. Our simplified installation tool sets will make it easy to install, upgrade on any of the supported infrastructure service platforms. And once you get the infrastructure service platform down, then we have to think again. When we install TKG, the first thing we're going to want to install is this management service, right? So that way, ultimately, we really have a bar set to where we need for IT consumers to be able to provide very simple methods to get automated services delivered. So whether that's giving access to a self-service portal where someone you can connect the APIs here for TKG, to a front-end catalog such as the vRealize service catalog. Or really any service catalog if you have a preferred one, right? And that allow your users to get that on-demand access. Same time, Kubernetes and containers applications running on Kubernetes really need to have access to be able to have those API-driven automations so they can respond dynamically as needed for managing the life cycle of the application. And then so once I have my management services and I need to go deploy a Kubernetes service, if I say have it deploy just Kubernetes by itself, is that really enough to actually get up and running? And the answer is really no, right? Because everything from authentication, I need to have ties into enterprise grade authentication to tap into my groupings and my security policies for my users. Right? We need to have monitoring configured and this isn't just referring to external monitoring, even the components and how you want to monitor the agents that you need to do to report metrics and so on. You need to have those configured and integrated into your stack. And there's multiple options available in open source. And so with TKG, taken care of, right? Logging as well. We talked about lifecycle management, container registry. Again, Kubernetes is a platform for deploying containerized applications. And when a Kubernetes control plane schedules a container to run on a Kubernetes node, then the node is going to pull the container that it's going to run from a container registry. So those services are very critical for the operation of Kubernetes. And Ingress, and you can also throw in load balancing services. Ingress provides a layer 7 gateway where you can specify for a particular URL extension which service that it's forwarded to in the cluster. And it's aligns closely with load balancing services, which provide a layer 4 inbound connection. And so really, if you're offering any services in your Kubernetes environment that need external access in, and that could be external access, say, from a corporate network into a private Kubernetes cluster network or service, really, or if it's a public-facing service, you'll use an Ingress or a load balancing service in Kubernetes to allow that external user to access the service that it's offering. And so there's a lot of additional components, from having a compliant runtime that's kept up to date, the additional infrastructure plugins, diagnostics, and the images that make it really simple to install these things. And just, as we go through, we'll see there's some really additional critical components we'll look at in a little more depth. Now, in the next section, we're going to go ahead and look at as we saw before, some of the challenges, the requirements needed for operating Kubernetes. This next section, we're going to look at operating Kubernetes with TKG, see how TKG can answer some of those questions we were looking at before. Thank you.